श्रीशैलेशदयापात्रम् धीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवम् यतीन्द्रप्रवणम् वन्दे रम्यजामातरम् मुनिम् लक्ष्मीनाथसमारम्भाम् नाथयामुनमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ताम् वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् यो नित्यम् अच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणम् प्रपद्ये लोकाचार्याय गुरवे कृष्णपादस्य सूनवे संसारभोगिसन्दष्टजीवजीवातवे नमः।
श्रीशैलेशदयापात्रम् धीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवम् यतीन्द्रप्रवणम् वन्दे रम्यजामातरम् मुनिम् यो नित्यमच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणम् प्रपद्ये लोकाचार्याय गुरवे कृष्णपादस्य सूनवे संसारभोगिसन्दष्टजीवजीवातवे नमः। We continue with the exposition of the Mumuksupadi, the Trimantra Prakaranam. தொலைவில்லி மங்கலம் தொழும் என்கையாரே ஸ்வரூபம் சொல்லித்து வேங்கடத்துறைவார்க்கு நமஹா என்கையாலே உபாயம் சொல்லித்து அந்தி தொழும் சொல் என்கையாலே பலம் சொல்லித்து. It is the 88th sutra of the Mumuksupadi. As we have studied in the earlier class, Tolevilli Mangalam Tolum. So the word Tolum means just a minute. This is explained by Swami Madhavana Mamuni as follows. Idu thannai upapadikirar mel moonru vaakyathale தொலைவில்லி மங்கலம் வித்யாதி, அதாவது தொலைவில்லி மங்கலம் தொழும் என்று அவனுகந்த அருளின நிலத்தளவும் செல்ல சேஷமாயிருக்கும்படியே சொல்லுகிறவளவில் தொழும் என்று நமஸ்காரத்தை சொல்லுகையாலே ஸ்வரூபம் சொல்லித்து. As I have mentioned in the earlier class, the 108 Divya Deshas are chosen sites, as they are generally referred to. In Tamil, they are known as Uhandu Arulina Nilangal. Nilam means location. So the Supreme Lord, Narayana, chose certain sites, certain divine sites or locations to manifest himself. That is known as the Divya Desha. So these 108 are the chosen sites where the Lord Narayana, he willed that I should manifest myself in these locations. And further they became more exalted and more sacred and pious on account of the Alvars propitiating those deities who manifested themselves in these 108 Divya Deshas. One very important thing has to be noted here. In all these Divya Deshas, the Supreme Lord has manifested himself in the iconic form of the Archa Murti. From the physical point of view, these are purely from a physical point of view. The icons are said to be actually, even this word should not be used according to the Shiva Vaishnava Sampradaya. But they are made of certain materials. But when does the manifestation of the Supreme Lord in these iconic forms becomes maximum or maximally evident? This is a very important question as far as the Agama Shastra is concerned. Therefore, in every Divya Desha, especially down south, if you go, in all the Divya Deshas, there will be an icon of a Rishi also, who will be situated in the Garbhagriha or the Sanctum Sanctorum itself. So they will say, when they actually make you worship by showing the Arati, the Archaka or the Pujari, he will actually show, he will say, this is Gautama Maharshi, who is sitting here. So Gautama Maharshi ki pratyaksham. So this Supreme Lord was, he manifested in the divine vision of sage Gautama. So they will say Shandilya Maharshi ki pratyaksham, that Maharshi, this Maharshi, etc. So depending upon the unique spiritual evolution of the sage, the time during which the Divya Desha will retain its sanctity is mentioned in the Agama Shastras. This is very, very important, and I am sure Keshav Das ji will be knowing this. So it is said that if it is consecrated by a Brahmarshi, the sanctity of the Divya Desha or the temple and its manifestation, or the Lord's manifestation in the icon or Vigraha that is present there, the sanctity shall be retained for 10,000 years. And also there is a beautiful saying in Sanskrit which says, Archakasya prabhavena shila bhavati shankara. And also it is said, Archakasya harissa akshat. As far as the Agama Shastras are concerned, the Archaka plays a very, very, very crucial role. He has to be a Jnani, he has to be a person who has attained the divine vision of the Supreme Lord. And because of his worshipping the iconic form or the Archa Murti, the Lord will manifest himself in the Archa Murti and do all good things to those who worship him. So it is the persons who are of a highly exalted spiritual achievement who actually fill the iconic form with their divine spiritual powers or prowess, both. That is why if an Archa Murti has been worshipped by an Alvar who is supposed to be of the highest spiritual attainment, then it gains greatness. That is why when we go to the Divya Deshams 106, which are worshipable in this world, especially in down south North India, many people may not know, but some people still know. They will say Tirumangi Alvar has actually sung about this Lord in this manner. Periya Alvar has sung about this Lord in this manner. They will quote one or two verses and say, this deity has been sung about by this particular Alvar. And each Divya Desha among the 108, we cannot actually have the darshan of two while we are in this body, that is the Kshirabdhi or the Milky Ocean, and Paramapadam, that is Vaikuntha. Of course, Ramanujacharya had the vision when he was in a divine mood of ecstasy or whatever you would like to call it. He had the vision of Vaikuntha, which he has actually extolled and described in a wonderful manner in the Vaikuntha Gadyam, where he says, Dhyana Yogena Drishta. I have had the vision of Vaikuntha by means of Dhyana Yoga. which is the exact word that he uses in the Vaikuntha Divya. But not all of us are like that. So we cannot have the experience of Vaikuntha or the Milky Ocean that is Kshirabdi when we are in this body. So among the 106, each Divya Desha has a unique quality. So this Tolevilli Mangalam is a Divya Desham, which is one among the Navatirupatis of the 9 group of chosen sites, which is situated near the tip of the southernmost part of India, that is Kanyakumari. It says Tolevilli Mangalam Tolum. So I am always indebted and I worship the Lord of Tolevilli Mangalam, which is a very unique Divya Desha because Nammalvar has sung about the Divya Desha in a very beautiful manner. So it is Shella Sheshamayirikkum Padiye Shulluhiradu. So I am always indebted or I am always subservient to the Lord of Tolevilli Mangalam. So you can find out more about the Divya Desha. Just you can search in Google. And if you put Tolevilli Mangalam, you will get all the details. So I will not go to explain that because already it's available online. All the 108 Divya Deshas have been put online in several Vaishnava sites, which you can easily access and there is no problem in doing it. Then வேங்கடத்து உரைவார்க்கு நமஹா என்று திருவேங்கடமுடையானுக்கு சேஷமென்னான் எனக்குரிய நல்லேன் என்று ஸ்வரக்ஷணத்தில் பிராப்தி இல்லாத ஸ்வரூப பாரதந்திரியத்தை சொல்லுகையாலே அவனே உபாயம் என்னுமிடம் சித்திக்கையாலே உபாயம் சொல்லித்து. One or two very important concepts are mentioned here. In the Bhagavad Gita, we talk about 3 important yogas: Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga, in that order. And finally, the Supreme Lord Krishna also tells about the Prapatti or Prapatti Yoga as it is known in our Sampradaya. Here there is a question from the point of view of the philosophical dialogue or debate. In the Mimamsa Shastra, there is a Nyaya or maxim called Tatkratu Nyaya or the maxim of Tatkratu. Tatkratu Nyaya is, I generally explain it in the following manner. Suppose there are 2 programmers, software programmers in an organization, and they are allocated identical work. But one programmer is paid $2,000 per month, while another programmer is paid $2,500 or $3,000 per month. Then, if they come to know about, if the person who is being paid less comes to know that his colleague who is getting paid more for the same nature of work, then what will he do? He will approach the boss and say, "Sir, there is a disparity in pay." This is especially so in the government circles in India, where pay disparity is a big issue. So he will say, I don't know whether it is there in the US. I'm sure it is bound to be there, but it may not be so blatant or very serious as we have it in the government jobs as far as the Indian scenario is concerned. So what does this Tatkratu Nyaya, the maximum of Tatkratu says, Yatha kratuhu asmin loke purusho bhavati, tata itah pretya bhavati. So a person does penance for 10 hours or 12 hours. He performs Jnana Yoga, let us say, for 12 hours per day. And another person performs Jnana Yoga for 6 hours per day. So due to their performing their Jnana Yoga, both of them, they will actually attain moksha, let us assume so. But according to the Madhva philosophy, there is Taratamya or there is difference. I would not like to call it disparity. There is difference or distinction between these two persons. So a person who has performed Jnana Yoga for 12 hours per day, gradation also you may call it. A person who has performed Jnana Yoga for 12 hours a day naturally has to have more happiness than a person who has performed Jnana Yoga for 6 hours a day. It is very, very logical and it's correct also. It's in the fitness of things if you put it in English. So, yathakratuhu. So, depending upon the severity of the penance performed in this world, the person will enjoy the fruits in the world yonder or hereafter, after he leaves the body. This is the nature of the Tatkratu Nyaya, or the maxim of Tatkratu. But in Vishishtadvaita philosophy and also in Sri Vaishnava religion or Sampradaya, we say no. We don't negate the Tatkratu Nyaya. We accept it. But we say that there is no distinction among souls who have attained moksha or salvation. How is it logical? It is very logical because the Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga and Karma Yoga, etc. are steps that lead to the Supreme Lord who alone is the means to attain salvation. So who is the means or what is the means? The Supreme Lord himself is the means, the Supreme Lord himself is the end. So we worship the Supreme Lord so that he can bestow us salvation to enable us to enjoy him the maximum. Enjoy his company, enjoy his grace, enjoy his togetherness, etc. So though Tatkratu Nyaya is very much valid, ultimately it is the Supreme Lord who is the Paramasasana or Paramopaya. So is the Supreme Lord different for each person? No. He says, Samoham Sarva Bhuteshu. So he is equal to all persons. Of course, he shows more favor to devotees, but there he will not do any partiality or bias. He will not have any partiality or bias. So since the Supreme Lord is the common means for all souls to attain salvation, there is no gradation or there is no bias or there is no distinction between two souls, two or more souls, mutual distinction between two or more souls after they attain salvation. So ultimately it is the Supreme Lord who is the Upaya. That is why even while we define Sharanagati, what does it mean? Tvameva upaya bhuto me bhava iti prarthana matihi sharanagati. What is prapatti or surrender or sharanagati according to Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya? It is well defined when it is mentioned in Sanskrit. Tvameva upaya bhuto me bhava iti prarthana matihi sharanagati. You worship the Lord and tell him, you alone are my means. You alone are the person who can deliver me from the ocean of samsara. So worshipping thus is what is known as Sharanagati. Of course, you give all your entire Atma, you dedicate your entire Atma, your body, your soul, your body, your sense organs, your mind. Dedicating everything to the Supreme Lord is what is known as Sharanagati in another context. So you have to dedicate everything to the Supreme Lord. That is Sharanagati or Prapatti or surrender. But when a Shastric explanation has to be given to what Sharanagati is, it is mentioned as Tvameva upaya bhuto me bhava iti prarthana matihi Sharanagati. I do not have the capability to perform any yoga, like Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, etc. And I have decided to surrender myself unto you. and want only you to be my means to attain salvation. This is what is meant by Sharanagati. So that is what Nammalvar says when he says, Vengadatturaivarku namaha. Vengadatturaivan, the Lord of Vengadam or Venkatakshetra. In Tamil it has, the word becomes Vengada. Venkata means becomes Vengada. Because there is no distinction between ta and da in Tamil. So Venkatam, Vem, Papam, Katayati iti Venkatam. This is one of the explanations given why it is known as Venkata. It is known as the Venkatagiri or Venkatagiri. That means the hills, the 7 hills on which the Supreme Lord Srinivasa or Venkatesha. Yes, you can show the quote, no problem. He is situated, is known as Venkatadri. So Venkatadri samam sthanam brahmande nasti kinchana. Yes, Venkatesha samodevo na bhuto na bhavishi. Yes, so that is Venkadatte Tirumalayahi. Tirumalaile உறைவார்க்கு நித்தியவாசம் செய்தருளுகிற பெருமானுக்கு நமஹா நமரி என்று சொல்லுவதாகிற அந்த கடமையை சுமந்தார்களுக்கு etc. So Vengadatturaivarku namaha is the aspect that we need here in the present context. So he says, even it is a very important aspect. He says, the English translation is done beautifully. Those who serve him even by lip alone are rid of past karmas and relieved of future works. Yes. So this is one very important aspect, even by lip service alone. Why it has been mentioned like that, I will mention in another context because it's a big topic. Which is going to come in the Shivatana Bhushanam. Of course, if we read Shivatana Bhushanam, but otherwise, also it's a very important topic which I will dwell upon later. So, Vengadatturaivarku namaha. So, this Sharanagati is having the Supreme Lord alone as the means to attain moksha is expressed by the word namaha, which is what is the upaya. And Anditolum Shullingayare Halam Shullit Anditolum Shullendri Dasyarasam Atishaital Adinudia Charamadashaile Shullakadavan Tolum Shullennum என்று நமசப்தத்தை சொல்லுகையாரே பலம் சொல்லித்து. So, what is the fruits or what are the results attained by the having the Lord himself as the means? The fruits or results is what? More and more and more servitude to the Lord, which is what is mentioned as Andi Tolum Shul. So one very important aspect, I have mentioned it earlier also once in an earlier class, but I want to mention it because some people who are present in today's class may not have heard it. A very serious objection is raised by the Advaitins and other philosophers who say, what is this? Even in the state of salvation, you want to serve somebody. You want to engage in servitude of the Supreme Lord. And it is mentioned that Seva Shvavrittirakhyata. Servitude always is, it's a dog's struggle for existence, to put it literally. So does anyone want to become a servant or does he want to become a master? Every human being or every person for that matter wants to become a master other than become a servant. Therefore, they object to our views and they say, what is this? Even after going to salvation or attaining salvation, you want to serve. And servitude always is the cause of misery. Seva dukkha hetuhu, seva atvate, raja seva. They also, in the logical, according to Indian logic, they use what is known as a syllogism. I will not go into that detail because that is a domain of Nyaya Shastra. It is not very relevant. So they use what is known as a syllogism and say seva dukkha hetu. Sevatvati raja sevavati. Every instance of servitude results in misery. And the example or analogy given is raja sevavati. Is a person who is in the servitude of the king, is he happy? He may be happy when the king rains some goodies on him at some time, but the mood of the king will not remain the same always because he has 100 things to think about. And it's always very important that he is not sure when the king will actually get angry with him for no fault of the person who is serving. That is why, incidentally, there is a very beautiful shloka in Sanskrit, which is universally applicable. It's incidentally I am mentioning because it's no way connected to the current context, but it is connected with the servitude of the king. So in Sanskrit, there is a saying which says, Atyasaktihi vinashaya, ati durantu nishphalam, seva madhyama bhavena, raja vanhi guru striyam. If you get too close, it will result in disaster. If you are too far, it will not be of any use. Too much proximity results in disaster. Too much distance is useless. It does not yield any fruits. So, seva madhyama bhavena. So, these things should be attended to in a very balanced manner. You have to take a via media between too much proximity and too much distance. With regard to 4 things, Raja, Vanhi, Guru, Striyam. So you should not be too close to the king. Because if you are too close, someday when his mood is not right or something happens, something bad happens, he will make you responsible and he may even hang you. On the other hand, if you are too far, you will not get any benefits. This is from the general point of view, not from the point of view of spirituality. So you have to serve the king in a via media way. Don't become too close. Don't be too far. Raja is the first one. Then second one is Vanhi with regard to fire. Without fire, your food will not get cooked. You cannot eat cooked food, which is very much necessary for our body. But if you get too close to the fire, what will happen? You will burn yourself. So, too much proximity with the fire is dangerous. Too far away will not be of use. So, you have to have a via media approach with regard to fire. And third one is very, very important, Guru. Too much proximity to the Acharya or Guru can result in Acharya Apacharam. Because the Acharya might have some small, very insignificant weaknesses. So, if the Shishya or the disciple becomes too close, he will start noticing those weaknesses and he may lose his respect for the Acharya. And it will result in Acharya Apacharam. Or if he is too close, someday if the Shishya's clothes are lying in some place, the Acharya might think it is his cloth and he may wear the Shishya's cloth, which is a great Apachara. Or if the Shishya has consumed some food and kept it somewhere, if the Acharya takes the food of the Shesha of the Shishya, it's a great sin for the Shishya. Acharya will not be affected. So too much proximity towards the Acharya is dangerous. And if you are too far from the Acharya, how will you get his grace? So seva madhyama bhavena. So you should not be too close, not be too far, but maintain an optimum relationship with regard to the Acharya. And fourthly, with regard to women. This is also very important as far as our lives are concerned. So, of course, this does not apply to the husband-wife relationship. Other women, if you are too close, it can result in disaster. I will not elaborate because it's quite obvious. And if you are too far, even actually is a very important concept, once again, it is universally applicable. So it says, if you derive so many benefits which are perfectly under the laws of spirituality, laws of what is that? Righteousness from many women. But if you get too close to women other than your wife, then it is bound to result in disaster. That is why there is a very beautiful explanation and also episode in the Mahabharata. So there is a saying in the Mahabharata which said, where when Vyasa authored the Mahabharata, he was dictating the verses to Lord Ganesha. And there was an agreement between Lord Ganesha and Vyasa. So when Ganesha accepted to act as a scribe and write down the Mahabharata, he said, you should never stop composing the verses. Because there's a huge ocean of verses to be written down, more than 1 lakh shlokas. Then Vyasa accepted the challenge and he said, he imposed one challenge on Ganesha. He said, unless you understand the shloka and you are convinced about its meaning, its importance and significance, you should not write even one letter. So it is mentioned in the tradition that whenever Vyasa wanted to attend to his daily duties, like Sandhyandanam, etc., or his bath and his other personal aspects, he would compose a very cryptic shloka or a very little controversial shloka and make Ganesha think. And by the time Ganesha could realize the import or realize the significance of the shloka, he would return back. So one such shloka is, these things are not mentioned anywhere, so I am mentioned in discourses, so I am mentioning this. So Vyasa composed the shloka, he says, Matra swasra duhitrava na viviktasano bhavet balavan indriya gramaha vidvamsam api kashyati. So you should not be too close, especially when you are alone, either with your mother or your sister or even your daughter. Because balavan indriya gramaha, the group of sense organs which is there in the human being, they attract or they even corrupt the mind of a vidwan or a realized soul. Then Ganesha, he was not convinced about this. He said, yeah, I accept. What you say is correct, but I actually beg to differ from the aspect when you say Balavan Indriya Gramaha Karshyati is okay. The group of sense organs or the human sense organs or motor organs, whatever they will actually corrupt the mind of any individual, I accept, but you are mentioning Vidvamsam api Karshyati. Even a realized soul gets corrupted in certain cases. That I don't accept. Then it seems, to put a long story in a nutshell, then it says, so Vyasa created a situation. It's a very, very beautiful story. I am not going to that. Vyasa created a situation where Ganesha was one of the persons. And he virtually enacted a wonderful episode. Then he asked, now do you agree? Then Ganesha said, no, I don't agree. Because he says, Vidvamsam api Karshyati, even the realized soul's mind is corrupted. No, even now you are not agreeing. Why? Then Ganesha said, no, what you have mentioned is an understatement. You should have said Vidvamsam api Karshyati is now, it's not enough. You should say Vidvamsamapi karshati karshati karshatyeva. You put the superlatives, two superlatives or three superlatives, and say even a realized soul is corrupted in certain cases. So there is in English literature, they say, in the classic of Shakespeare. So there is in this play called Julius Caesar. So when Brutus, who is the closest, one of the closest friend or the closest friend of Caesar, stabs him in the market, then Julius Caesar says, "Et tu, Brute," then falls Caesar. What is this? Even my closest friend Brutus has stabbed me. Then I should not live hereafter. So then Shakespeare says, this was the most unkindest cut of all. Then in the literary criticism that follows this statement, the question is asked, unkindest is enough, most unkind cut of all should be right, or unkindest cut of all is sufficient? Why is he using two superlatives? Double superlative is not acceptable according to English grammar. Either you say most unkind cut, or either you say unkindest cut of all. But then they say, to show the propensity of the crime conducted, it is not incorrect to use two superlatives, namely most unkindest cut of all. So we have several parallels like this in other literatures also. So then Ganesha said to Sage Vyasa, what you have mentioned is an understatement. That is why I disagree with you now. On the other hand, you should have mentioned as Vidvamsamapi karshati is not enough. Vidvamsamapi karshati karshati karshatya. Even a human, even a realized soul, the mind of a realized soul is corrupted and severely corrupted. That is how it should have been. So this aspect with regard to other women other than the wife, is very, very important. Therefore, it says, Atyasakti vinashaya. If you are too close to a woman other than your wife, it will result in disaster. On the other hand, if you are too far away, then it will not be of any use, because many people, many women play a very positive role in our lives. Many women other than the wife also play positive roles in our life. So they may be relatives, they may be colleagues, etc. But don't get too close to them. This is the warning. So here also why I mentioned this is seva dukkhetu sevatva dradasevati. If the too much close proximity to the king is dangerous. But this argument or the servitude unto the king is dangerous. The argument is negated by saying karma paravashatvam upadhi. This syllogism does not hold good, because if you are performing a servitude because of your bondage, then definitely it is of misery. It results in misery only. On the other hand, if the servitude is based on your voluntary, on your own volition, then it is most enjoyable. And I gave the example which my father many times quotes. Suppose Joe Biden comes to Keshav Dasji's house and he is chatting with Keshav Dasji. Or in India, I can say Narendra Modi comes to a person's house and he is chatting with the people of the family. Then he says, oh, I have left my specs in the car, can anyone get it? 5 people will run, I will get it, I will get it, I will get it. That means we have so much of respect, each person has so much of respect, or they are enamored about the position, that they voluntarily go and do something for that person. So if this is the case with regard to an ordinary person who is temporarily the head of a state or a country, then what would be the pleasure that one gains when the person actually is the Supreme Lord, who is the master of all the universes, Akhilanda Koti Brahmanda Nayaka. And what more great pleasure is there than to serve him? So only if servitude is a result of previous karma, it results in misery. Whereas if it is on his own volition of a devotee, then there is no more great happiness or bliss in serving the Supreme Lord, Supremest Lord, who is, that is why in Bhagavatam it says, not only Purushottama, is Purushottamotama. And I am sure Keshav has come across this term in Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam. The Supremest Lord, and there is no, because he is the personification of compassion, he is the personification of beauty, he is the personification of all the divine qualities. So, engaging in servitude unto him gives most bliss or enjoyment. So that is why it says, Andi todum shollengeyane phalam sollitti. அதாவது அந்தி தொழும் சொல் என்று தாஸ்ய ரசம் அதிசயித்தால் அதனுடைய சரமத செயலே சொல்லக் கடவ தொழும் சொல் என்று நமசப்தத்தை சொல்லுகையாலே பதம் சொல்லித்து. So ultimately the namaha is surrendering wholly to the Lord by all means, by means of our body, in sense organs, mind, everything that we have is the upaya or the means. And what is the result? Result is his servitude. So we serve him to attain him, and as a result of his attainment, we serve him. See how beautiful it is. So that is why we call it as sadhya bhakti and sadhana bhakti also in other terms. So you can share the quote, no problem. But I think I have already explained it in sufficient detail. திருப்பேரான சுழியம் கண்டு கழிப்ப கண்ணுள் நின்று அகலான். With surging love, the heart has reached the last word. And he engages in the enjoyment of the service of the Supreme, servitude to the Supreme Lord. That's what it is. So then we come to the 89th sutra. உத்ததும் முன்னடியார் கடிமை என்கையாரே பாகவத சேஷத்துவம் சொல்லித் அனுசந்தேயம். Then Pudalokacharya says, one more very subtle aspect is to be understood here, which is the essence of Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya. So though we say Bhagavat Sheshatvam, Bhagavat Partintrim, etc., this is the first level or the beginning only. The further level is, or the final, or the frontier, you can say, if I may use that word, of the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya is engaging in servitude unto the devotee of the Supreme Lord, who is a realized soul. So he says, that is why in the Stotra Ratna, there is a very beautiful shloka, which is mentioned by Anandar. He says, Sakritvadakara vidokanashaya Trinikrita anuttama bhukti muktibihi Mahatma birmam avadokyatam naya Shanepite yadviraho atidussaha. So he asks the Lord, he requests, or he compels the Lord rather with his devotion. And he says, what is it that I want from you? He says, I want you to facilitate my being seen by your devotees. Not that I should see them. I should come into the visual field of, to put it in a medical language. So when they test the eye, they say test the visual field. So they make the person move his eyeballs around and say, so is this there in the visual field? Is this there in the visual field? So they call it as visual fields in medical parlance. So whether you are able to see, so a person when he sees, when he has, without shaking his head, he should be able to see all around, then only his vision is said to be correct. So here, Alavandar or the Yamunacharya, who is the Acharya of Ramanujacharya, says, I don't ask, I don't want to come to you and serve you. On the other hand, I want to be seen by those great devotees of yours. Which type of great devotees? Then he beautifully explains, he says, Sakrit Twadakara Vilokanashaya Trinikrita Anuttama Bhakti Mukti Mahatma. These are divine souls, greatest of the great souls. What have they done? To have the divine vision of yours, of you, the Supreme Lord, for only one moment. Sakrit Twadakara Vilokanashaya. They have a deep burning desire. Desire for what? For enjoying some liquor or some women or something like that. No. They have a burning desire, a deep desire to have the divine vision of yours only for one moment. And for that purpose, what have they done? Trinikrita anuttama bhukti mukti. Even the highest or exalted worldly pleasures have been given up by them. They have done what is known as trinikara. In Sanskrit, trinikrita means you treat somebody as equal to a small blade of grass. So, suppose there is a blade of grass, who considers it with great respect or something like that? So, in Sanskrit and the Indian languages, they say trinikara man. He did trinikara. Trinikara means neglecting or not caring at all about something very, very, very insignificant. So suppose there is a blade of grass lying in the road, who will care about that blade of grass? So these great people who wanted to have the divine exalted vision of you, the Supreme Lord, for a one moment, they have given up all the exalted pleasures of the worldly life as well as the spiritual life. Such is their greatness, such is the greatness of these wonderful divine people who are your devotees. And all I ask you to do is make me seen by them, not that I should see them. They should see me and bless me. That's what I ask for. So this is the Kashtar, this is the frontier of the Bhagavata Sheshatva. And Bhagavata Sheshatva can be mentioned in several other aspects, which I have mentioned based on the Ramayana. I think I have mentioned it, the nature of Shatrugna, how it was, etc. in earlier class. So if you want me to repeat it, I will repeat it. Otherwise, I will not repeat it because it has already been mentioned in detail. So he says, Padatile tadiya sheshaktam arthamanusandheyam yangayale hira. So artham means something, what is the derived meaning is known as artha in Sanskrit. That comes from artha, the meaning. That comes from the literal meaning. Is known as the derived meaning in Sanskrit. So you don't actually mention it directly. It is indirectly mentioned. It's also known as the implied meaning. But this goes a little bit farther than what we call as implied meaning. So it is known as, in Sanskrit, it is known as Dhvanyartha, or a meaning that is derived based on the meaning of the world. It's not directly ascribed to the words, but indirectly ascribed to the words. A very classical example is given in the Shastras. So once a young boy, this analogy or this instance is valid in India. It was valid in India, rather. I don't know whether it is valid in India now, because the entire social structures, etc., have changed. So it is. I don't know whether it is valid in the Western context. So the general analogy given is, once a boy who was about 8 or 10 years old, he went to the house of an enemy of his father, because at the age of 8 or 10, the boy may not have any direct enemies. So he went to the house of an enemy of his father and had food there. Then the father came to know that his son, who is 8 or 10 years old, consumed food in the house of an enemy. Then immediately he scolded him by saying, Visham Bhungshva, consume poison, get lost. So that is the literal meaning. So then what should the boy do? If he is a very obedient son, then should he go and consume poison? Is it what the father wants him to do? Definitely not. So the boy should realize that taking food in the house of an enemy is worse than consuming poison and losing his life. So here, the word Visham Bhungshva does not mean consume poison. What does it mean? It is intended, the proclamation of consume poison and get lost or something like that, which is proclaimed by the father to his 10-year-old son, means that the boy should not go to the house of an enemy and have food there. It is worse than consuming poison and losing one's life. So the severeness of the instruction will not be understood if he does not use the severe words of consume poison. So suppose, let us assume that the father says, don't go to the house of an enemy and consume food, because in Shastras it says, Dvishadam nabhoktavyam, dvishantam naiva bhojayet. This is another very important episode in the Mahabharata, which I am not going to now. So, the severeness or impact will not be felt if the father tells his son, don't go to the enemy's house and have food. He will think it will be a very ordinary instruction that he has to follow, but he may ignore that instruction. Whereas if the father says, consume poison and get lost or something like that, then the boy will be able to realize that what he is doing is a very serious offense, that he goes to an enemy's house and has food. So this implied meaning, or the meaning that is, so the implied meaning or the derived meaning of the word consume poison in get lost is, consuming food in the enemy's house is worse than consuming poison and losing one's life. So the severe sense in which the words have been mentioned can be gauged only when the words are uttered in a severe manner. That is known as artha, or the meaning derived from the meaning of the word. It's not directly derived from the word, consume poison and get lost. But it is derived from the meaning that the father is giving such a severe and impractical or what should not be done actually. No father will ask his son to consume poison at any point of time. But to make the son realize the seriousness of the mistake he has committed, he will say consume poison. This is known as artha, or the derived meaning, which is a step farther than the implied meaning. So he says, Padatile tadiya sheshatvam arthamahanusandhe mahayale. So not only is he subservient to the Supreme Lord, he is subservient to the devotees of the Supreme Lord also. This is very, very important. Uttadam endre uttadam, it is already quoted here itself. Nannin thiruvettalutthum kattinan உத்ததும் உன்னடியார் கடிமை என்ற திருமந்திரங்கத்தால் நான் உத்ததும் உன்னடியார் கடிமை என்னும் இவ்வர்த்தத்திலே. So as Keshavadasji has pointed out in the Periya Tirumozhi of Tirumangai Alvar, he says, what is the fruits or what are the results I have attained by constantly chanting the Ashtakshara Mahamantra? The realization that has dawned upon me is that I choose to serve your devotees. So constantly, of all meanings interpreted, the only one I chose to take is service to your devotees. Very beautifully given. I think the English translation which is given here suffices to capture what is being mentioned. இத்தையருளி செய்கிறார் இது இவ்வர்த்தத்திலே என்கிறபடியே அகங்கார மமகாரங்கள் நிவர்த்தமாய் பகவத் சேஷத்துவம் உள்ளபடி பிரகாசிக்கிறவின் மனசினை நமசிலே தத் காஷ்டையான பாகவத சேஷத்துவம் அனுசந்திக்க வேணும் என்கை. So Tirumangai Alvar says, having continuously chanted the Ashtakshara Mahamantra, what I have realized is I am subservient to your devotees alone and not anybody else. So that means he should have actually realized I am subservient to you alone and not anybody else. But he has realized that I am subservient to your devotees and not anybody else. That means he is subservient to the devotees of the Lord, Bhagavata. So what is the meaning of Bhagavata? Bhagavataha ime Bhagavataha. Those who are very, very closely associated with the Supreme Lord, those who have had the vision, who have had the Bhagavat Sakshatkara, they are actually known as the Bhagavatas. So ultimately I am subservient to those who are your devotees. So this can be interpreted in many ways in Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya. We say Bhagavata Sheshatvam. We can also interpret this as Acharya Sheshatva because Acharya is a Bhagavata Shrestha. So these things and the further aspects we will discuss in the next class. Today I will conclude here. Any questions, observations?
Swami, I wanted to talk a little bit about summarizing. In Churnika or Sutra number 76, it was said that the letter Ukara, the U
yes,
in Omkara, also represents Namaha. Namaha is equivalent to it.
Yes.
And that today we covered that in Sutra 88, that Namaha reveals these three things, reveals the Swarupa, reveals the Upaya and Pala. So those three things. And that part of the Pala, part of all these three things is Bhagavata Sheshatvan, is the subservience to the Lord's devotees. They're part of all three things, I think. Is it?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So yes, so part of understanding our nature is we are also servants of the Bhagavatas. We're also servants of the Bhagavatas, and it also helps us in attaining the Lord. So it's part of the Upaya, and it's also it also occurs in Sri Vaikuntham also.
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to
serving the devotees who are serving the Lord. That is also a great bliss or happiness.
So in the Veda it says Pasyanti Surayaha. Does it mean that in Vaikuntha we are just watching, or are we actually doing something?
No, Pashyanti means they are always. So what is that watching? You are enjoying. Watching means not like I am seeing a door or window in front of me. I am enjoying what I am watching. It's like when you say watching the movie, what does it mean? You are not you totally involve yourself. So when a person is so engrossed in the movie, suppose somebody comes and disturbs, they will even hit him or beat him. So, hey, why are you disturbing? I am so engrossed in the movie. So watching is not just your eye contact or something like that. You are totally involved in that. So that is why in Ramayana he says, in a context he says, Chakshusha prapibanniva. How should a person worship the Lord when he is seeing? As if he is drinking through his eyes. That's what it is mentioned in Ramayana. So you become so engrossed in the Supreme Lord that everything you are totally involved in him, and so becoming one means you should not take it the Advaitic interpretation. You just forget yourself and merge. So there are several instances in the Shiva Vaishnava parlance to give analogies. Anyway, so you are so immersed in the movie that you have forgotten yourself. Your very existence you have forgotten. That's what it means. So Sada Pashyanti is that. So they have totally forgotten themselves, that they don't feel their existence separately. That's what it means. Dramanujetyesha chatura chaturakshari कामवस्थां प्रपद्यन्ते जन्तवो हन्तमादृशः पुण्यां भोजविकासाय पापध्वान्तक्षयाय च श्रीमानाविरभूद्भूमौ रामानुजदिवाकरः तृणीकृतविरिञ्चादिनिरङ्कुशविभूतयः रामानुजपदाम्भोजसमाश्रयणशालिनः।